know what questions or number we're on. And then when Alexis comes in, hopefully she can jump back in. Okay, so hi everyone. My name is Ellen Regret. I am one of the committee members for the election committee. We welcome you tonight to our debate for the members at large board member. Today, we will be hosting our debate with 3 candidates, Alexis Ballincongan, Michael Haas, and Kathy McKenna. But before we begin, I will go over some rules of engagement, and they are the following. This session will be recorded and will be sent out to the voting members of New York State HIMSS, New York State Chapter HIMSS members, the members of the election committee, myself, Yasmin Henry, and Dr. Amin Hakim will be asking questions in a round robin format. So we will be switching who's going to start off the answer and the answering process when we do. Bill Duox will be manning our technical endeavors for today, and Nick will be our timekeeper. So he will be letting you guys know when your time is up. Our candidates will have 2 minutes each to respond after the question is asked, and then your name is being called. Once your 2 minute is up, you will be muted, and we wish everybody the best. And we will begin by having our candidates introduce themselves, and then we'll go and start with the questioning. There's Alexis. Let me just see if Alexis is able to join us, because she's the first person. But if not, Michael, introduce yourself. You have 2 minutes to introduce yourself and let the voting body know who you are.
Sure. Hey, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Michael Haas. I reside here in New York City, and I've been a member of this chapter for over 2.5 years now. I've played in roles on the marketing side and the membership committee side. I currently hold a role on the technology task force team, leading the team through completion of engagement to the members on communication, marketing, events, all the above to keep folks engaged. So looking forward to continue being involved in the chapter, and thanks for your time.
Thank you, Michael. Our next candidate is Kathy McKenna. Hopefully I'm saying your last name right.
Close enough, McKenna. It's all good. Kathy McKenna, I've been a member of the New York chapter and HIMSS for, gosh, probably close to over 15 years. And also participate as a co-chair of the Nursing CNO Vendor Roundtable in the national level. From our chapter perspective, I have responsibility as a task force lead on the membership committee with Armand and team. And my background is critical care nursing, hospital administration, vendor leadership types of roles, consulting leadership roles, and I currently work as a national strategic account executive for Health Catalyst, working with clients to make data-informed decisions. And I live in Western New York. I'm about 30 miles north of Buffalo, right on the Canadian border. So thanks.
Okay, and not but not least, our third candidate is Alexis Ballincongan. Please introduce yourself to the voting members.
Thanks, Ellen. Good evening, everyone. My name is Alexis Ballincongan. I am currently a regional connectivity executive with Hillrom, now a part of Baxter. And so I started my journey as a critical care neurosurgery trauma nurse over a decade ago, and then eventually received my master's in nursing informatics from NYU. And since then have been very fortunate enough to be a representative of our companies nationally whereby our teams validate systems and solutions to create integrations and interoperability. And I'm most proud of a company I previously worked for at the height of COVID here in New York City, in any shape, way, or capacity where we can help any hospital at the height of COVID. We created systems for them free of charge, knowing the state of the global pandemic that we were all in. And so as a frontline worker, as a nurse informaticist, and now as a vendor representative, very proud to represent all aspects of care.
Thank you all three for your lovely introduction, and I'll have Jasmine ask the first question.
Thank you, candidates, for joining us. So let me start off with the first question to Michael. Michael, as a member of New York State HIMSS chapter, what do you think we are doing right? And what changes do you think will benefit the organization, and why? What are we doing right, and what changes do you think would benefit the organization, and why?
So things we're doing right is I feel we have a really strong board right now, and we're going to continue to have that board moving forward with these three candidates here, whoever wins. And so I think the board that we have is really engaged with members. And so I think that's something we're really doing well. And now it's just a matter of how can we continue to reciprocate back from members. So we're putting out all this content, we're putting all these events together, and how do we manage the feedback from our members? I think the other great thing that will come from where we are now in the end of this pandemic is we will be able to start having more in-person events. So we had some members that were part of the chapter, and I think some of them got lost or did not necessarily see all the value left in the chapter because things were remote or they weren't able to see people in person. And I know that as we move into the fall months or as we move away from this COVID era, we will hope to have more events in person, whether they're here in the New York City area, if they're up in Rochester, maybe even out in Western New York, so we can reach all of our members across the state. So I think that's one thing that we tried to manage during COVID, and that's something we will improve upon as we move forward.
Thank you. Thank you. Kathy, same question. As a member of New York State HIMSS chapter, what do you think we're doing right? And what changes do you think we could make to benefit the organization, and why?
Again, I would echo that we've got a strength in our existing board that is visionary in terms of the content topic that we are providing our membership. And it covers diverse areas of, topics that we're facing our provider organizations today, as well as those that, as a result of the pandemic, we're seeing the Great Resignation, reduction in labor, and finding qualified candidates to work in the provider organization, anything from M&A to diversity to cybersecurity. So the whole gamut of a lot of the top challenges that our healthcare ecosystem is facing today. I think our programming is phenomenal. Our outreach to members to try and grow our membership at whatever level so that we either sustain our membership, but really looking to grow them. The in-person events, I think, will make a huge difference. That connectivity that everybody's been craving for post-pandemic. The why is a lot of wanting to connect after 2 years of being home or being remote and not having that connectivity. But I think we're doing a great job in terms of our programming and trying to grow our membership and having a variety of representation on our board.
Thank you. Thank you, Kathy. Alexis, same question. As a New York State HIMSS chapter member, what do you think we are doing right? And what changes do you think we can make to benefit the organization moving forward, and why?
Thank you so much for this question. It's an absolutely great question. And, to Kathy and Michael, absolutely resonate with the same sentiments about how we have a strong board, about how we are, one of the largest chapters who are very involved, and how our members are also very involved with our chapter. But I also like to focus on, on some aspects of change and what we can do to improve and grow as a chapter. And for me, very personal in terms of what I've been trying to achieve as a past board member this past year is how do we target other audiences and other members within our communities other than the members that are already existing within our chapter. And I am a huge proponent about mentorship and menteeism and how do we get the youth of our communities so that we can have full and equal representation of the very diverse ecosystem that exists in New York that's unlike any other place.
Thank you so much. And I'll pass the second question over to my colleague. I believe that's you, Ellen.
Yes, thank you, Yasmin. For the second question, we did get a glimpse of what you hope to accomplish as a board member, but given the time frame of the first 6 months, what do you hope to accomplish? And then how do you define success if you're elected a board member for our chapter? We will start off with Kathy.
Thank you for that question. I think in terms of the first 6 months, it's really getting my arms around each of the respective committees and where I personally can contribute and volunteer my time. So a measure of success would be the level of engagement that I would have in each of the respective committees, whether it's the membership committee or programming committee. Also doing outreach to colleagues, friends that also are in New York State or not, to share the benefits of the chapter. And the measure of success for that would be the increase in members through those outreach efforts. So I think those are a couple of the key things that I would do. Also looking at where our membership has provided feedback in terms of any gaps in programming or communication so that we are doing the largest outreach. I think most recently we are now communicating not only, on Facebook and LinkedIn, but Instagram. So looking at the effectiveness of that outreach to entice new members and engage our existing membership. And one last thing is stratifying the members by type of member. So Alexis is a nurse, I'm a nurse. Where is our nursing community? Are we growing that clinical community given that our clinicians are the recipient of many of the emerging technologies that we're trying to promote or vendors that we're trying to engage? So taking a look at that lens and how we're impacting those specific populations of members that we'd like to grow. Thanks.
Thank you, Kathy. Now Alexis, for your response.
So Kathy, I know you mentioned Instagram, so I'm very proud to say that having the Instagram platform newly introduced to our chapter, has been very successful. I'm very proud to say that I've been the owner of the Instagram account. So I'll say that one of the greatest things within our chapter is how have we reached our constituents and our members and then other potential new members, whether they are students, whether they are existing clinicians, or even other, I always say diversifying our membership. So are they pharmacists? Are they in the financial, sector of healthcare? How do we reach those members so that we can get more engagement from them other than one subset of, a group that has been highly engaged? So not only focusing on those that have been engaged within our membership, but also have we been successful in engaging other members who are in other, let's say, groups within our, chapter. So I think in terms of measuring success as a nurse informaticist, I'm all about stats, facts, and figures, but it's not always about the numbers. Sometimes it's about, what is the feeling of our members? Are they feeling like they have the value of the membership they've invested in? what are other aspects to that membership that they would like to see come out of it. And then that's how I feel like we can measure success, by actually listening to our members and what they want to get out of this membership.
Thank you, Alexis, and Michael, for your answer.
Yep, I think everybody's hit it spot on, Kathy and Alexis, and we all think alike because we have been working together so long. So I admire their answers. And I think just to piggyback on what they've said, one of the things that I would love to see as a board member and just a continued leader of a committee is to see more people come out for these types of positions. You can see on this call right here, we have 3 people who have been very heavily involved in this chapter for many years. And what I would love to see is to see new candidates come in and apply for the committee leads or apply for positions that are on the board, even if they didn't have as much involvement. And so I would gauge success in a chapter by more involvement, not only from the committee leads and the board members, but you can grow a chapter with tons of people and have great metrics there, but are they just a number, or are they involved in that? So I would love to take it a step further to see, are they engaged in the mentorship program? Are they connecting with the committee leads? Are they applying for board positions and stuff? Because yeah, we have great numbers. New York is a huge state and we have tons of members, but how many of those members are actually engaged? Some of our surveys that we see responses to have less than 100 responses to it, or 100 responses. You know, when I see that there's over 2,000 members across the state. So when you look at it from that perspective, if you have people engaged, it's one thing versus members that are on your chapter roster. So I would engage success by more people involved and more applicants applying for these positions.
Thank you. And I will hand it off to now Amin to ask the next set of questions.
So I'll pose my question first to Alexis. So, so I think, you know, what came out from one or more of you earlier and during you, when you introduced yourself, that you've been active in some form of fashion. Some of that, you know, came up in the last question, but I'll formalize the question for the audience. You know, are you currently a member of a New York State HIMSS chapter committee? Tell us about your experience with that committee, or potentially some other activity. And if you're not, or even if you are, which committee or committees would you be interested in as a candidate? Or, you know, for a member at large. So starting with you, Alexis.
Thank you. I mean, so currently right now I am a member of the New York State chapter. I am the chair of the diversity committee. And then I also am a member of our advocacy committee. And currently right now, I'll put this plug in, we have a webinar tomorrow night. So if anyone can join, that is at 5:30 p.m. And then I am also an active member of the nursing committee, and then joined the membership committee as well, and have also participated within our finance committees so that I can get a broader understanding of the finance aspects of the New York State HIMSS chapter. So I like to keep busy and make sure my calendar is color coordinated.
Thank you. Michael, you're up next for the same question. Would you like me to repeat it?
Nope, I got the question down. Thank you very much. So my role has been on the Technology Task Force Committee. I've been leading that with Bill Duax and a few other members, where we post the content to the social media sites. Alexis came forth and put together the Instagram initiative this year, which has really helped grow. It really helped us grow at the HIMSS conference too. People were able to post pictures, react to pictures, be very engaged. And that's the engagement that we want to continue to grow with our members. I think what's really great in the chapter 2 is we have a diverse group of members that range in all types of ages. And I think what's really great too is we have a committee lead with Al Cannell in our mentorship program, trying to bring people on from the Rochester Institute of Technology. So I know Tony has some connections with some schools out on Long Island. And so we're trying to bring in a younger generation into the chapter. And then we have experienced generation that can be a resource for the younger generation. So to answer your question, being a leader on the technology task force, what I'd love to continue to do is to be that bridge of communication, to know what is available for the younger or newer members coming into the chapter, and being connected with the more experienced members, and using the more experienced members to, put together presentations and content, or additional committees for that matter. We have our vendors and we have our clinical side. Well, maybe there's a bridge there, or maybe there's a committee that is not yet created, and just keeping that open mind as a board member is where I'd like to take the next step.
Thank you. Kathy, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, I think I have it. Thank you.
Okay.
So to date with the New York chapter, I've been involved with the membership committee as the task force lead over what used to be the OA program. We're calling it the Provider Member Engagement Task Force. I also am a member of the nursing committee, and will be speaking this month to talk about the journey to why I aspire to get my fellow HIMSS certification and advancement. And while I don't directly work on the programming committee, I've been able to provide connections for potential consideration for CEUs, as well as speakers, and most recently recommended a dear friend and colleague I've known for 30 years to speak about activity-based costing and quality and costing. Collaborated with the marketing committee in terms of our infographic that we created this past year to try and promote and encourage new folks to join, and had the pleasure of working with actually someone that Al knew, an MBA student who had just graduated with her marketing and communications degree, and Jessie Luxembourg. And so we brought her in as the younger generation to help her advance and, looking for a full-time position, but yet she was a great person to work with in creating the infographic and helping to build the content for marketing on our various channels. And then certainly participating in events as they occur at HIMSS. We had the New York, New Jersey chapter luncheon and networking event there at HIMSS this year.
Thank you. I'll pass it on to Yasmin.
Thank you. Thank you, Amin. So from the sound of it, you've all been really engaged in the various committees in the chapter. So help our viewers to understand a little bit more about the role that you are up for, vying for right now. So what is the difference in your mind as to being a board member and a committee chair? What do you find is the difference between a board member and a committee chair in terms of authority, maybe influence and obligations? And I'll start with you first, Michael.
Okay. So I've thought a lot about this too, and I think it comes down first with the voice at the table. There are things that you're not privy to in the chapter as a lead versus a board member. And I think when you come to the board member or the board level, not that it's some form of secret group or anything, but you get to have more constructive constructive conversations, and you get to bounce ideas off each other that is best for the chapter. And what I would look to bring to that board is not something that's just going to go along with the status quo, but try to look at it from a holistic picture, as well as what is the best course for the chapter going forward. I think the board may or may not be talking about technology investments. So someone coming from the technology task force team, just thinking about other avenues of connecting with members or engagement, bringing that technology piece to the board would be really great. So thinking through it from that lens, the difference between being a chair, lead, and a board member, you also can bring that voice to the board. So maybe I have some members that reside in me, or confide in me rather, or my committee for that matter, and I can be the voice for that committee or those members at the board level, so that the board can recognize that there's either this concern or there's this interest, if you would, and then that can be an initiative to put forth. And what I want to preface there is not to put forth my own personal agenda. It's more what is best for the chapter.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Mike. Kathy, same question. Let me know if you'd like me to repeat it.
No, I'm good, thank you, Yasmin. I think I'm not currently chairing an existing committee, rather, lead on a task force and participating in others and volunteering for others. But to echo what Michael said, when you are in a board position, you have a broader purview over all the committees and activities in the chapter where you can apply your respective talent. So, it would be bringing the nursing informatics lens and my background as a leader in a provider organization or a vendor, a variety of vendors that I've worked with, or consulting. So putting on those various hats to look at, how can we continue to evolve our chapter to meet the needs of all of those constituents, and not necessarily, it's just bringing that other lens and perspective, and then contributing to each of the respective committees that I can participate in, or, chair if it makes sense, if there's an opportunity to co-chair, for example.
Thank you. Alexis, same question.
Thank
Likewise,
you.
if you need me to repeat, I'll repeat the question.
Thank you. So as the chair of diversity, there are certain tasks that you have to fulfill as a chair, as lead of the, let's say, diversity committee. So ensuring that the mission and values are adhered to by your committee, that the goals of your meetings or the webinars that you create are also adhering to the mission and values of the committee. And then having the ability to report back to the board in terms of meeting notes, agendas, successes, wins, and then also proposing any ideas in terms of webinars, sponsorship, any of those from an administrative point of view would then lead up to the board. And then having been a past board member as well, it's almost like a bird's eye view. Instead of adhering to the missions and values of one specific committee, you're now adhering to the specific bylaws within your chapter, not only within the state, but then with also the national bylaws. So I'm a huge proponent in terms of assessing the bylaws that we have within our chapter. Are our members adhering to it? Are there any needs for any amendments and changes as our chapter grows and changes? So I think those are the marked differences between, let's say, a chair of a committee versus having a seat at the table at the board.
Thank you so much. I'll turn it over to Ellen.
Thank you. So our next question is, everyone typically tells us about a good decision that they made and the results of it. Instead, we are asking you to share a decision that you've made that turned out poorly within your organization or for yourself, and the lessons learned. We're going to start off with Kathy this time.
So most recently, for the organization that I'm working with, I actively recruited a former colleague of mine who's awesome. And I knew that his career path was, he had just completed his PhD and had a dissertation on the socioeconomics of ACOs. And so I knew that he wanted to grow within our company and have a leadership role, which he was, considered for. But because he didn't immediately get promoted and didn't have the ability to apply that skill set in his time frame, he's since left the organization. Granted, it's been a couple of years, so it was a decision I made. He contributed greatly to our company, but I think my, trying to promote him, knowing that maybe that wasn't his true aspiration, given he had just completed his dissertation. So it was a loss for our company, a loss for me personally, because he was a good friend and colleague, and I'm sure he'll do well in his next journey. But that's one example I can think of right now.
The next person is Alexis. Do you want me to repeat the question?
No, thanks, Ellen. I think, one of the mottos I live by is whether you're at work, whether you're making decisions, being on a board, is head, heart, guts, right? Are you thinking things through? Are you thinking with your heart because you're passionate about it? Are you going with your gut instinct? And I was in a situation for work where I needed to think either with my head, my heart, or my guts. And I let the head take over. And what I've learned is sometimes you need to go with your gut instinct. And as a nurse, as a clinician, many times people say, as a parent, go with your gut instinct. And that's basically what I learned from it. At some point, you have to go with your gut and still take into consideration your head and heart, but factor in all three. But ultimately, your gut will lead the way.
Michael, your turn. Do you want me to repeat the question?
No, Ellen, thank you. I got it. I think there's many real world examples or even work related examples, but I think one that kind of I learned from or am still learning from, and that's where why I want to be a board member and learn from the chapter members is I recently applied for the finance or the treasury board position where I was going up against a great teammate and now board member. And one of the questions that was asked of me, and I think may have looked badly on me or didn't go well for me, was should members have to pay dues? Or should members have to pay for certain presentations to attend? So if we brought in a presenter for that matter, and the presenter, was giving up his or her time to present and wanted to charge for the event, and therefore we charged our members, would that go well? And I said, yes, we should charge for that person's time, and whether that was the reason for the outcome or not, that was something that had been weighing on me a little bit because I want to make sure that the folks are getting the most out of their membership. And is the cost for the membership inclusive of everything? Should there be some form of tiered thing? And working with the bylaws and the rules within the HIMSS chapter, being that board person, I want to think through what is the best value for our members from a fee standpoint, and what does that fee weigh so that we can make sure members are getting the most out of it and want to continue to be more engaged.
All right, I'll ask the next question then. Thank you. And I'll start with Alexis. So how, as a board member, there are many issues that will come up for discussion and ideas, as you said earlier, and issues that you may bring from a committee or a task force. How do you convince others on the board of an idea or a concept? And what would you do if they still disagree? In spite of your speaking to that idea or promoting a concept?
So I think the easiest way I'll put it is that sometimes you won't reach 100% of your audience, right? But if you get a majority of it, or at least a consensus of everyone, then that's the route you'll have to take. So when you assess the bylaws and the rules of engagement within a board, and it comes to voting on a topic or on a topic of discussion or a new process or policy or anything like that, you still have to follow the rules of engagement within our bylaws and obtaining the consensus when it comes to voting. However, convincing other people is a different story, right? So I think it's about the story behind whatever topic you're trying to present, and then presenting it with, again, stats, facts, and figures, but then also the value proposition in terms of what you're offering to the table. So it might not necessarily be a dollar or, a monetary value add, but if it's something else that's of value and meaning, then absolutely it's worth bringing it up to the board.
Thank you. Michael, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, thank you. I got it. You did a very good job of explaining it ahead of time, and everybody for that matter. I think it's something that it took me a long time to understand and accept. It's okay. It's okay to agree to disagree, meaning that even though I'm very strong on an opinion or the way I think something can go and others disagree on it, it doesn't make them wrong. It doesn't make me right and vice versa. It's going to be what is best for the chapter. And so I think, you know, the term for the position is only 2 years, and those 2 years will come and go like the blink of an eye. And I know that just because I've seen and have participated in these campaigns for a while now. And so what I've learned from previous board members and what I hope to bring to the board is just work to try to be that compromising person that you can be. And again, this is a volunteer thing, so there's only so many hours of time that is allotted, and sometimes there's topics that run longer. So you just have to work with a cohesive unit to just think through things, make sure time is assigned to specific topics. If you have to circle back on something later, if you have to have anonymous voting, go right ahead. But just think through different channels on how you can get out of that gray area or that issue area where you're going to have conflict, and just keep in mind that it's all about the chapter in the end. Put personal aside and think what is best for the chapter and the members.
Thank you. Kathy, would you like me to repeat the question?
Nope, I'm okay, thank you. You know, I was going to echo what Michael said in terms, sometimes you have to agree to disagree, but at front and center, it's what's the value proposition, you know, what are the facts of the topic that you're trying to influence. And you may not reach 100% consensus, but it's, if you agree to disagree, will you support the decision moving forward? And again, what is the benefit to the membership of our chapter? So as far as, you may be at odds as far as influencing someone, but if you can put it in the context of what's the benefit to an individual member, to our chapter as a whole, explain those factually and try and take emotion out of it, because it may be, you know, an emotional topic. I think that's the way that you can get to a point where you can agree to disagree and still support it as an initiative to move forward. I have the opportunity in my role in my company now where it's working with client governance meetings, and you know, there's voting members, non-voting members, and one way, although it is a voluntary role being on the board, is a pre-meeting so that you can understand the other person's position if you think that they may be a detractor to an idea that seems like others are supportive of, to take the time to really understand that other person's point of view so that you can come to some mutual understanding and move an initiative forward.
Thank you. All right, on to the next question. You're on mute, Yasmin.
My apologies. So I'm sure you'll all agree with me that time is a commodity that none of us ever have enough of, right? And so I know there are extreme demands from you, from your various organizations. However, because of these demands, you have missed 2 board meetings. What would you do? And try to keep your answers as concise as possible. I know you can get off on a tangent with this one, but considering our time constraints even now, we'll start with Michael.
Oh boy. So time is always against me, but I know that's not the way to open it. But I think one of the great things is when you are a board member, you do the best you can to make the time available. And so you just have to be committed, and you have to be able to put the time aside every week. Fortunately, being a leader of the task force, you know, you build up a team of people who will be there for you when you need to go on vacation, or you need to take care of a family event, or even a work event. And so, you know, Bill Duax has been an A team member on my team and has stepped up and has really, you know, been, you know, a co-chair, if you would, of the technology task force, leading and taking on initiatives within the chapter. So, you know, just being able to parse out part of your week as if this is your job. You know, it is a volunteer position, but treat it like a job, treat it like you're attending a client meeting, whatever. Come in prepared, come in that you want to bring your A game, is how I would be represented as a board member.
Thank you. Kathy, same question. Let me know if you'd like me to repeat it.
Oh, good, thank you. I would say my end of day is midnight. So seriously though, I think when you are taking a position that's significant, even though it's a volunteer position, you do need to block the time. You know, even on the calendar, aside from color coding, which Alexis mentioned, it's like do not schedule or cannot move. You know, it's protected time on the calendar, and getting those out there in advance and communicating with your work colleagues that you do have commitments outside of work, and with your family members, you know, that there's certain meetings that are key that you just can't miss. And then finding that support system for the different committees where you do have a co-chair to lean on, or others that can represent you if you're not able to participate in a committee meeting. But it's really, you know, noting the significance of the board meetings and that it's a commitment that you've personally made, and making others around you aware that you're making that commitment.
Thanks, Kathy. Alexis, same question.
Thank you. So having been a previous board member, I take that role very seriously, right? Having the privilege to have a seat at the table is very important to me. So I treat it just like I would, you know, my job that would pay me, except it's volunteer work. Knowing that things can come up, I, you know, having worked with Nick and Bill and Ellen and you, Yasmin, you know, things happen. I fly a lot for work. You make it work, whether you're taking a call while you're at the airport terminal, or, you know, you're taking it sometimes still on the plane. But this is a team effort. This is a group effort. It's not an individual person running the board. It's a group of members. So I think what's also important to note is that if you were to miss, let's say 2 meetings, or you were to miss a meeting, you also take the time and dedication to read back the minutes that were taken. Consult with a colleague that's on the board to confer with them in terms of, did I miss anything? What should I be made aware of, so that I'm kept abreast of the situation or the meeting that I missed. So it's having the responsibility and the knowledge to say, yes, I missed a meeting because of certain circumstances, they can happen, but I am doing my due diligence to be caught up in terms of the meeting of what I've missed.
Thank you so much. Over to you, Ellen.
Thank you, Yasmin. Another question. So it's a more scenario. You become aware of a situation at a board level that may cause a fellow board member to lose their seat within the board. What will you do and why? And we'll start off with Kathy.
I think the scenario, you know, is it fact or assumption? So it really is understanding the situation. And if you have all the discovery and information that you should have to, you know, consult other members to see if really it was a scenario or an offense that should remove that individual from the board. So I think it's really doing the appropriate discovery first and foremost before raising it, or making a recommendation that a board member should lose their seat. And then based on that discovery and the facts, would be presenting it appropriately to the right committees, compliance committee, president, to make an appropriate decision.
Thank you, Kathy. The next person is Alexis.
Okay, thank you. So it would be the scenario that Kathy mentioned. It's actually bringing the information that you have at hand directly to our compliance committee. So our compliance committee is there in place. They have their own rules of engagement in terms of assessing the information that's brought to them, whether it's having an interview process with that member themselves and or other members within our organization. So it's not coming to a conclusion based on an assumption, rather coming to a conclusion based on a survey of that particular member in question and then other members within the board.
Thank you. Next person is Michael. Michael, you're muted.
Sorry, that was my dog in the background. So Kathy and Alexis hit it on head on, and working with them, we think like I mentioned earlier. But as a board member, you take the role very seriously, and all board members should take like that oath of their role, and that they would uphold the bylaws, and that there's no double standards. And so if you do come aware of something, and you have to uphold your part of the bargain and report it accordingly. That person could be your best friend, that could be your mentor, but then you're just as much as a culprit if you're hiding it or doing anything like that. So, hopefully we won't have to run into any of those scenarios on our board, but if in fact that does come up at all, I would be ready for it and proceed accordingly.
I'll pose the next question then. I think that was the last one, Ellen, right?
Your question will be the last one.
Right. So, and I'll start with you, Alexis. And this question is related to the previous question. Would you share with us a situation where you may have observed some prejudice, bias, or non-compliance as a board member, maybe as a committee? If none of the above apply, then maybe in a different scenario or in a different context.
Absolutely, great question. So as a chair of diversity, I think it's very important that we as a chapter are very inclusive of all of our ideas, are inclusive of every single member that's within our chapter. I think in particular, if I was aware of any prejudice, bias, or any of those, let's say, situations that might be in violation of, I absolutely report it back to either that specific committee or to that team, or maybe point out and say, maybe the verbiage within a specific post is not really inclusive of our mission and values. How can we change that so that we can become better and that our messaging is in line with our mission and values?
Okay. Michael, would you like me to repeat the question?
I'm all over it, so thank you. I think, being a consultant myself, working in the consulting world, you have your tax, you have your audit, and you have your consulting. And, from a compliance standpoint, you can't audit things that you're taxing. So, I'm experienced in that world, and you don't touch that because there's rules and regulations, and if you don't think you're going to get caught, you're going to get caught, and you're just a fool. Personally, being on the consulting side, I haven't had any issues where I've had some compliance. However, we've had some scenarios where we're doing some implementations and we are at a point in the project where we're supposed to be at one place and we want to make things look good with the client. So you say you are, but you're not. And I think there's some gray area there, but I think you need to continue transparency. Transparency is what makes things work. Communication is what's going to take you through to the long run, and you have to own up to any mistakes that you have. If you've run into an issue or you made a mistake or something, if you're collaboratively working with your board, then it's not going to be a big issue, and you work through it together.
Thank you. Kathy?
As far as the New York State chapter, I haven't had an opportunity to see anything that demonstrates bias or lack of compliance. To echo Michael, one of the tenets of my company is tell the truth even when it hurts, and being transparent. I think that's fundamental, so that if you do see something say something, understand sensitivity of the different constituents that make up our membership and our board, and be transparent and truthful.
All right. Thank you. Thank you all. All right. Back
And
to you, Ellen.
this concludes our debate for the member-at-large board member candidates. We thank the candidates and wish them well and the best during this election period. As a reminder for all our voting members who have registered, make sure you check your emails, even your spam or junk box, because you will have gotten an email from us regarding to vote now. Voting is open from June 13th to June 24th. Our voting closes at June 24th at 11:45 p.m. No exceptions. And again, thank you for the board and New York State HIMSS for this day. And thank you, everyone. Be safe and be well.
You too. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Good luck, everyone.
Thank you.